All right. All right, let's make a start. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Business Board and extend a special welcome to Kelly Swingler, our newest member of the board. Kelly?
I'm still
Are you there?
Hi, I am. Hi.
Very good. Welcome.
Hi, Kelly.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
In terms of technical arrangements for today's meeting, this has been held by Zoom video conferencing and will be recorded live for governance purposes. If you experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, please refresh your connection at the first instance. Board members' participation will be monitored for quorum purposes. If it becomes apparent that we've lost members and are no longer quorate, it may be necessary to adjourn and we may have to reconvene the meeting as a telephone conference. Let's hope not. Can I remind board members that this is a private meeting, which only business board members and specific officers are invited to, so I trust that you're all in a secure private place. To ensure everyone is online and present, we need to confirm our names so attendance can be registered. So can I suggest, if I do a roll call of board members, you could just shout out if you turn on your microphone. Start with Tina.
Yes, I'm here.
Thanks, Tina. Mark Dorset.
Yes, here.
Faye Holland.
Present.
Thank you, Faye. Amir.
Yeah, present.
I have apologies from Al Kingsley. Nikki Morby.
Yeah, present.
Nikki. Jason Mellard.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jason. Andy Neely. Right, now Andy, to shoot to another meeting, I'm sure he'll probably join us in the fullness of time. Nitin Patel.
Yep.
Rebecca Stevens.
Hello, Austin.
Good afternoon, and Kelly was spoken.
Yeah, hi, Austin.
Austin, may I interrupt just a second? Could I suggest that all participants put their mics on mute so that we don't get an echo when Austin speaks?
Thanks, John. In terms of apologies, I've noted Al Kingsley. Any other apologies or feedback?
No, there have been no further apologies that we know of.
Goody. Declarations of interest. This is an opportunity to declare pecuniary interests in any other conflicts of interest. Do members have any conflicts to declare? And if I may start with, as the manager of a business that's potentially a recipient of LGF funding, we may well come on to some ideas around what we may do to help businesses under the current circumstances that could impact that positively or negatively, perhaps. And I suggest there are other members that may have similar interests.
Yes, I have we were in receipt of a contract from the Local Growth Fund.
So TWI is also in contract negotiation at the moment. So there's a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, I just want to declare an interest in Peterborough University as well.
Thank you, James.
I'll quickly declare my interest in StartCode on Accelerator as well.
Any more?
Do I have to declare an interest in the university then?
Yes, you do, John.
Okay, please note.
All right. Moving on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January. Are members happy that I sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January 2020 as a correct record? And do the officers any updates on the action log at the back of the minutes? I'll take it that everyone's in agreement. Could we just go to the actions? Take a quick look at what is outstanding.
Hi, Austin. I've got a copy of the minutes here, and the 109 was around Market Town strategy, and it was confirmed that the Market Town strategy would be funded by the combined authority, and that there would be a subsequent update to the business board once Dom, in fact, had done a call for proposals, and we had proposals in against that £5 million of Market Town strategy funds. There was a second one that I think has gone by the board a little bit, in that from the presentation that was made on the CAM, business board members asked if there was anything they could do, and the project manager Graham was going to get back to us and hasn't yet. I think the reason for that is things are developing, and one of the pipeline LGF proposals is in fact related to the CAM. So that will probably come up during Steve's board paper.
Understood.
Another action was on the chair, actually, to review the expectations on the BAP from the board, and I think that's something that is ongoing. The next one is there was a question raised on the Agritech program that we are running in terms of its R&D grant, and whether those grants could be given to larger companies. We can perhaps talk about that when we talk about our COVID response. And we said that we would, the officers would get information on what state aid restrictions there are on this, which is still in play. Very related to that, board members observed that state aid was driven by the EU, and whether that would change in the near future. That meaning to do with our funds for LGF that we have allocated now. And I think the answer to that, well, I don't think the answer to that is that no, they won't change. State aid rules will stay in force on our current LGF funds. That doesn't mean that they'll stay in force on the Shared Prosperity Fund that may come to us in 2023.
So, John, do we know if they're going to just fall away when we leave, or are they going to keep them? Do we know that yet?
Well, what I can tell you is what the government and its negotiators are saying. They would love to get away with, to move away from some state aid rules that the EU currently impose in a post-Brexit deal. Of course, the EU are putting that as a red line, that any post-EU, post-Brexit deal would include state aid, so that Britain can't help its companies at the detriment of German companies, for instance. So we don't know. It's subject to negotiation in the Brexit negotiations. And that is it, I believe.
I've got a couple of others, I think, John.
Yep, sorry.
112 and 118. The action was
yes, this is the
funds manager to agree and review job creation estimates and provide a clearer picture.
Yeah, and that is being done as part of Steve Clark's bigger job to review all our projects, as well as to confirm the job estimates in the current list of applications. So those job estimates should now be correct in the reports that we show going forward.
Okay.
And as you say, there's another one in regard to the business support services promotional campaign, and the chair was very keen for Faye and Rebecca to get involved in a subgroup to define that promotional campaign, and I believe Brian is setting that up at the moment. Is that right, Brian?
We lost Brian.
I think we have.
Beg your pardon, everybody. Classic error of not unmuting. If I had £1 for every time I've done that already this week, I would be a rich man. Yeah, so just the update on that is that we will be doing that in liaising with Rebecca, Faye and Al to get their input on how best to run that campaign. Just right now, we've got the job spec finalised and signed off. I'm going to be looking for the right person to help us do that as well in terms of recruiting somebody. And in the backdrop of COVID-19, obviously, that might all have to change slightly as well, but that's ongoing.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Right, Chairman, John missed one name out from that. He
Al
said
Kingsley.
Faye and Rebecca, but he didn't say Al Kingsley.
Yeah, you're quite right. It doesn't actually say Al Kingsley in the body of the minutes, actually, but it does say it, you're quite right, on the action log.
Yeah.
And yeah, he definitely expressed an interest in participating in that, John.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, goody. Thank you for that. I'll take it that all of that is acceptable. What I'd like to do here is propose a change in order to the agenda to bring the latest situation on COVID-19 right front and centre. I think wrestling with that for a little while will help us perhaps provide the right context for any decision making or reviews of the follow-on points as we work our way through the meeting. If I may, could I ask Brian to move us fast forward to 3.8, please, and the coronavirus update.
Okay, thanks, Austin. I'll kick off this update and then we'll hand across to John to tell a bit more about some of the actions we're taking. But let me just sum things up briefly. In what has been one of the strangest weeks of probably everyone's career, it's been a really fast-moving environment. But I would sum up the work that we've been doing here in the team into two main categories. Those categories being getting our communications right, and the second one being starting to devise local interventions and being creative to have as much impact locally than we possibly can. So let me just start on the comms piece. At this time, obviously we realised it was crucial to have an effective communications channel to businesses across our entire patch. So we've been working very closely with Emily Martin in the Mayor's team to establish that. She's been excellent as well, her and her team. A special shout out to her particularly. We're also working with our Bohurst software to download pretty much details of every limited company on the patch to add them to our existing databases, so that as much as possible we're not missing businesses out. But there are gaps in our database, we'll acknowledge that. But we are also boosting that database by adding all the various local business representative networks as well, so that we're trying to cover as many people as possible. So this comms channel, what is it doing? Well, principally it's keeping everybody informed as much as possible. All the updates coming out of Westminster about support packages, and what it's also doing, it's asking for any feedback from those businesses. In terms of feedback from those businesses, we took the decision, and it wasn't a straightforward one, but we took the decision to establish a questionnaire online for businesses to respond to, which that was a hard decision in that at times like this, that's probably the last thing businesses want is a survey to complete. But we've tried to construct it in an empathetic way and to tell them and to give them the opportunity, if they wanted to take the opportunity, to tell us what's going on at their end and the impact at their end. And we've already had 100 responses to that. Domenico's got an email that he's going to just share with you. We haven't done the analysis yet, but Domenico will just share with you what's been coming through. These comms, both upstream and downstream, are then helping us inform us about what we should be doing locally. So that's the comms piece, and that is ongoing. And that pipe now is there for the next 6, 9, 12, 24 months, however long we need it, to keep businesses informed, but also monitor, importantly, monitor how businesses are recovering as well. So we're confident that's a strong piece of infrastructure now that we can rely on. On to the second piece, the creativity piece. The team have been working really hard over the past week with various Microsoft Teams brainstorming sessions, subgroups, etc. Basically looking at what we need to do locally and nationally to respond to this. All that feedback's been collated and fed in centrally and fed into the management team here, of course, so we can start picking and choosing what we can start doing here and now, and also what we can start doing in the medium and longer term. Obviously, this agenda item session can cover that in much more depth, because we're obviously looking to solicit ideas from as wider a piece as possible. And that's where the questionnaire that we put in place as well will hopefully help us craft our solutions on an ongoing basis as well. So that's it in a nutshell in those two categories, I would say. I'm going to hand across to John now, actually, who's been taking some of those ideas and those solutions and those brainstorming sessions that we've been doing, and he's just going to bring it to life now in a more structured, detailed way. So if it's okay, Chair, can I hand across to John Hill, please?
Please, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So hopefully all of you will have had a chance to look at your email this morning. Chair sent forward 2 documents. One was a Deloitte document, actually, which was a summary of what the government has currently done to alleviate the short-term liquidity and job protection issues. And the other document was a document from me that attempts to sum up what we're doing now and some ideas that we can discuss today about what we could do in the medium term going forward. So what we're doing now is, as Brian said, we've got downward comms from government into the business community and upward comms from the business community into government to inform policy making. We've also got, could I ask that we all put mute on, please? Oh, yeah, great. So given the government's collective response up till last Thursday and Friday, I think we're at a point to be debated that the short-term business liquidity and job protection threats are in the main handled, and the Combined Authority Business Board's role would start to become an information, advice, guidance and signposting role that makes sure that all the companies that are on patch absolutely have got access to the right information for how to draw down that funding in its various kinds. And as I said, there's a useful Deloitte summary that I attached in the email that shows what the current systems are and who is administering them and how they can be accessed. There is a second thing we could be doing now, which I'm sure we'll debate, which is around finance, because we have probably about £50 million worth of contracts out there at the moment, that some of which are under loan, So we could be adopting more flexible loan payments with our existing local growth fund projects. There is also the concept of, or for, the recent £50 million worth, which is quite a lot of money injected into the economy, for the recent £50 million worth of projects, whether we offer upfront payments to help with liquidity of applicants. That has risk issues for us, of course, that should be debated in terms of what if one of the companies goes bust with our advance. So we may consider what securities or charges on property or something we might demand for any upfront payments. Then the last bit is strategy in terms of two things, or three things actually. How we might adapt, which we can discuss now, how we might adapt our existing business growth service into more of a recovery service. Also, how we can adapt the £10 million that is in our current pipeline potentially for recovery, or £10 million that is being recycled that would currently go against the current pipeline of proposals. And then also whether we should be, as the 9 mayoral combined authorities are thinking about at the moment, whether there should be some sort of joint mayoral lobby into government for some sort of recovery programme or recovery budget pot of a mix of revenue and capital that could come into all of our areas, but particularly devolved to us to administer here, which would probably fund similar ideas to that which you would come up with today, but would supplement the funds we've got available locally. Remembering, of course, that most other LEPs and combined authorities don't have any funds currently available because they're all committed. So that's a summary of the papers I've sent you. Over to you, Austin, and for the board to debate and decide what we want to do.
Thanks, John. Let's start with some questions. James?
Obviously, this is a board decision, and I appreciate, thank you, John, for the update. From a combined authority perspective, I felt it was important that we put business response or our response to both business and our signposting to government front and centre of our policy for reacting to coronavirus. We obviously are, we do not have powers in the health system, and it's very clear that the government's response to this from a health perspective is a centralised response. And ultimately, the funding packages that government are putting forward are significant. They're not fully comprehensive, incredible though they are. So I think I would be very, very interested in hearing the board's response to what John has had to say. I think the fact that there is £10 million is not something that's insignificant when it comes to helping local business, if at all possible. And as far as I can see, what we are looking at now is how quickly business can react when this is over. And that's where I want to see Cambridgeshire in as strong a position as possible. Slightly disappointed that we've only had 99 contacts, or maybe I should be pleased that we have. Maybe that shows that business is quite strong. But I feel very strongly that it is the job of the Combined Authority and the Business Board to put itself out there as a support to business, to allow business to restart when the time comes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, James. Certainly support that view. Anyone else?
Austin.
Kelly?
It's Andy.
Hi, Andy.
So apologies, I was a couple of minutes late. Welcome what's been said. I mean, I think that the two things that I would chip in at this point, and it'd be interesting if others hear the same thing. The first is, I think, as James has said, the government's intervention in terms of making various loans and so on available is absolutely welcome. I'm hearing concern or confusion about how you access that money and how you access it fast enough. And even before that announcement was made, I am aware of people who had already made significant numbers of staff redundant. And I was really struck in the data that just went round about with the response of a third of the businesses replying saying there's now no demand for their products. So the speed at which businesses are going to run out of cash is incredibly, well, both rapid and quite worrying. And so any pressure we can put on government to clarify rules around how people get access to the money, etc., I think that's really crucial. The second thing is I think we are in this for the long haul. So just to put some kind of figures on that, I was talking to Sally Davis the other evening, who is the former chief medical officer, because one of my responsibilities at the university is to run what we're calling the recovery team. And it's exactly the point you're making, James, about, you know, when we've got our crisis teams and so on, but someone needs to think about what's it going to be like when we all come back, and how do you get the place kick-started again and secure students and deal with staff and all those things. So that's the job I've got, looking after that on behalf of the institution. So I was talking to Sally in that context, and we were talking about timescales, and there's a bit of this in the public domain now, but the sort of broad thinking is the numbers of infections will grow for 6 weeks, plateau, and then come down for 6 weeks. So we've got 3 months of the current situation. We've got within the next week or so, so I was told this about 3 days ago, between the next 1 to 10 days is when the wave will really hit this region. But once it's come back down and we start to let people back out, we are likely to get a second wave and quite possibly a third wave. So we may be going into a period where we let people out and then we have to put them all back in again, and then we let them out again and we put them all back in again until enough people have been infected that we've got then this so-called herd immunity. And a vaccine is unlikely to come for 18 months. By the time you get the vaccine, you've then got to make enough samples of it to actually inject people. So we need to be thinking about this as not just, when we talk about recovery, we need to be thinking about how long it may take before we're back into normal operation mode, and how we therefore help businesses over that time period.
Thanks, Andy. Kelly, I think.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Austin. I suppose just some kind of points to note, actually, before we start kind of talking or kind of answering the questions or getting creative about it. And some of those will echo what Andy said already. I think, firstly, from me, and I did raise this as well as part of the EAP, when we're talking about how we are communicating to local business, I don't get any comms whatsoever as a business owner, and I've been in the area for 6 years. So I think when we're looking at business comms, and I know we've said maybe some of the data isn't correct, but actually, are we using the right channels to reach enough businesses to get the right data for us in a local area? I think that's one point that we need to consider. I think from a skills perspective, we have got, and certainly when I was speaking to Rachel, the principal at PRC on Thursday, there are already a number of apprentices who have been let go from their positions because of this, particularly within small businesses. And I think we've got a kind of a catch-22 already, really. I think we've got a number of young people already that are looking for apprenticeships in the local area and are unable to find them anyway, based on the type of apprenticeships that they're looking for and the type of apprenticeships being offered for businesses. And I think if we've now got apprentices that are being let go as a result of this coronavirus, what does the future then look like for them? I think both now and in the future. And so where businesses have already let them go, is there a potential to say there's some of the businesses that we need to be supporting kind of first and foremost? And then I think probably thirdly, around the finance point, I think everything that central government have offered, I think is a huge help, I think, and very much welcome. But absolutely, I think from a pace perspective, certainly with a lot of comms that was sent out by the Chamber this morning, there's lots of information available out there, but actually where these funds are going to be accessed, it is going to be slow. So all of the, I think there are 40 banks that are listed on the, this is where you can get your kind of, you know, bank loans from. Every single one of those banks does not have that facility available yet. They're all saying they will have it done by Friday. But again, then we don't know what that process is going to be. I think some of the grant funding, again, very, very welcome, but that's people contacting or getting in contact then with small businesses to say this is what you're eligible for. And so I think with the pace, whilst there is a lot of support out there, I don't think, particularly a lot of, well, all size businesses, I think some of them will be having to make decisions now. They're not going to be able to wait for funding to be open, funding streams to be open, or for them to be contacted about grants. And so I think that's something that we definitely need to be mindful of as a region. And so if, you know, if there is a money pot there and we want to kind of discuss how to do it, maybe there is a bit more creativity that absolutely needs to happen to make sure that it's going to where it's needed in the first instance.
Could I respond to that, Austin?
Sure.
About stimulating a tirade of well, not abuse, but expected criticism. The scale of the systems that are able to be mobilised through HMRCs and the rate rebate system in the local authorities and the retail banks is significantly superior to what we could do. So the chances are, if we were to try and take a roll up that was about getting in front of the central government liquidity programs, if anything, would probably slow them down. I think it could be open to debate, but it could be our added value role is to look at what can we do after this when that the tens of billions of pounds have been mobilised, hopefully next week, into the companies around liquidity and job protection. Maybe our role is, once that is done and is working, and I think if we got in the way of it, we'd just slow it down. Our role is to think and fund the recovery that could happen August to Christmas and into the new year, potentially. Just a point on our systems compared to the systems the government has put in place.
Thanks, John.
Sorry, Anne, can I just have a say, please?
Sure.
In terms of our role, can we not help the smaller businesses actually understand how to get these funds? Because, you know, one of the things you've seen and hear, bigger companies have the resource anyway, generally, because they've done it before and they have the accountants. How do you teach the smaller businesses? Because there's a lot said about you can get it, but actually knowing how to get it is much harder than people assume. So surely there's a role there, particularly for smaller businesses, to be helped on.
Could I respond, Chair?
Yes.
I think one of the things the government have done, which I was shocked at, is they pretty much made this funding without any criteria. So you're quite right, Nitin, and you and I have discussed before, you know, in grants in general, the trick is in the skill of applying for them and understanding the eligibility criteria. That's not what's on offer. Pretty much if you qualify for rate rebate or you've got less than 51k rateable value, you get all those grants. You just have to talk to your local authority and you can just pull them down. Similarly, the loans will go out through the banks, and there's not too much we can do to help there, because although the loans are 80% guaranteed by the Treasury, the banks will of course look at their risk on that 20%. So, you know, potentially we could help with business plans there. We might be able to help with applications.
I think that as an offer could be something at that stage. But yeah, if it's that easier than the normal grant system,
yeah,
which it sounds like in the face of it, but if you've never done something, it's always hard to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we do have 3 people in the growth hub, and we're trying to mobilise another 3 further people. whose job it would only be to make sure that companies locally have got all the information that they need to go for these grants and loans, and they would be available as a helpline to make those applications.
Thanks, John.
May I just add something there, if that's okay, Chair?
Please.
Just on the comms piece, what we're also doing is obviously through that comms piece, making everybody aware of what's available. As and when we all know how to access it, that comms channel will feature those news updates as well. I'll take the point that Kelly said that she's not getting the comms. I'll look into that because we have downloaded all the data from Bowhurst, so that should be added to the database. So let me look into that, Kelly, for you. And then just the final point about comms to also help answer Nitin's question is that using our existing Brexit contractor, well, one of the things they were good at actually was doing events, and they were switching to webinars. And one of the ideas that we've put in place now is actually when we've got all this detail, let's get some webinars out there for our local business community. So they're, number one, told what's available, and number two, they're told how to access it. So that's definitely being drafted up as we speak. So hopefully that helps answer that question.
Chair, may I comment?
I wonder if we could just test the resolve of the comms. Is there anyone else in this meeting who hasn't, like Kelly, received information from the combined authority or signposting or linkage to help in that respect? I can tell you I haven't.
I haven't either.
Haven't directly, no.
I haven't.
So there is an email that comes out that and I've had 2 of the 3 ones that have been released, but that's all.
So I'll investigate that and investigate if that Bowhurst database has been added in, because that was being worked on last week. There's a hell of a lot of data to crunch in, but I thought it was just a simple case of importing it. Let me investigate that. We'll fix that.
All right, perfect.
Chair, may I have a comment, please?
Sure.
Yeah. So, John Hill, in a previous life, we used to work on proposals, and we used to have an example proposal, and everybody could read it and see, okay, I can write something like that. I'm wondering whether we could release demo proposals of how you can get these grants, because you're right, we all know, we've seen the news is available, but how to get this money, and maybe just some examples, some Q&A perhaps. Thank you.
Thanks, Amir.
Can I just add a point as well, if possible? So I picked up a call with Chris just in between our 2 meetings, just to see what support I could potentially give being connected within the really small business community. So obviously I'll pick this up, but there just seems to be more and more heightened miscommunication and lots of uncertainty, especially with the micro businesses. For example, the small business rate relief. So obviously the government has said there's a grant up to £10,000, but there's real kind of unknown around whether that's a flat rate grant that's given or whether it's based on a proportion of the square footage of your business premises. Just any kind of clarity that we could give would be, yeah, you know, really good as far as that small business community.
If I may, Chair, it's a very good point, Nikki. The clarity isn't there yet. Central government are still working on it. And of course, with that grant, that's the local authorities administering that grant. And of course, our constituent members on our board are local authorities. So I know that they're struggling to understand the situation as well. I'm hoping it will be resolved in the next maybe 4 or 5 working days. But as soon as it is, we will get out the information on it. And picking up on Amir's point, yes, we'll create example proposals for grants and loans that people can use to guide them.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
John, sorry, John, can I suggest if we do that we actually make an offer to other LEPs to share those, because everyone will be doing the same thing otherwise, reinventing the wheel all over the place. And it may be that someone's already done some of this.
Yeah, we're linked into the OxCam set of LEPs and into the Combined Authority 9, and we are constantly sharing what we're doing and our ideas. So yes, we are, but we're not, and we can additionally link into the LEP network. So yes, I'll take that on.
I think those two are fine. You know, the OxCam ARC and the Combined Authority 9 is enough, but it's just, I'm sure that other LEP boards are having exactly the same conversation, and if they come up with the same solution, we should do one and they should do one, and then just share it rather than duplicating effort.
Yeah, superb.
Agreed. James.
Yeah, I just wondered if board members would be able to check their spam just in case the emails have gone through there. I know the comms team have been working very, very hard to make sure that we get out to as many businesses as possible. So it could well be that could be that these are going into junk mail, and we need to know if they are, because then we can act on that. So if board members who haven't received anything through their businesses, they could let us know if they could check the junk mail, because it's very important that we understand, because if we've got contacts of 6,000 businesses and they're not getting the information, we need to know and try and understand why.
Yeah, noted. Thanks, James.
Chair, can I add in some comments as well, please? So I'm kind of the opposite. I think there's an overwhelming amount of information out there at the moment. I think there's a lot of good intention. John and George and myself were on a call last week with Cambridge and South Cams. You know, there's a lot of good intention, but actually as a small business, it is making things so much more complicated and distracting. So from a business board perspective and from the Combined Authority, what I'm really interested in is where can we add the extra value. So I really like John's approach of the added value once, you know, recovery started off from August onwards. And the critical thing now is signposting. You know, the local authorities on the call on Friday were kind of like, yeah, we don't really know how to issue these funds. And cash flow and retention of staff are the most critical. And the longer this, and I don't know if this is something that James Palmer, you can help us with as well, it's how can we expedite the ability to pay out businesses? Because again, on the call on Friday, there were 2 examples of businesses that were cutting staff or didn't think that they would last till the end of this week. So, you know, it really is critical that we get ahead of that, but it's where do we add value as opposed to all of us trying to, you know, is it the chamber? Is it the FSB? Is it the Combined Authority? Is it the local authority? Is it the banks? You know, it's going on, and it makes things really difficult for businesses like ours that have got to ride this entire issue.
Thanks, Faye.
Can I say I completely agree with all of that from Faye, and I really liked, you know, John's approach of some of the practical things that we could do that were sort of unique to us, like making the growth fund payment. And of course, there's another specific around that actually that I've been wondering about. You know, everyone has to spend this money by the 21st of March next year. There are going to be problems with builders, contractors, you know. Are the government going to hold us to paying that back? Do we know?
If I may, Chair, I know Kate is on the line and she's not going to answer that question because nobody can. But I think it's something that our mayor would be lobbying for, and lots of other people will be lobbying for, because not only that deadline, actually, the deadline for the LGF being March 21, but actually our business growth service that we wanted to launch has got a deadline of June 2023. And I think both of them might well end up getting moved, and I think there'll be a lot of people lobbying for that, but no guarantees.
If I may, Austin?
Yes.
From a entirely legal grant perspective, and Kate might shoot me for saying this, so apologies, there is no clawback mechanism built into the LGF funding. It would be a case of asking for forgiveness rather than permission if the projects did overrun. That said, obviously, the less well we achieve our outcomes on this funding will always impact our future funding bids to government.
Sure. Thanks, Robert.
Just remind me, just if I may come in, Austin, in response to what Faye said, I think it's a valid point about the Federation of Small Businesses and the Chamber and the combined authority in the same space. And I will liaise with John to try and make sure that we have a single voice coming out of Cambridgeshire for Business, so that anything that's fed through us is also, we will try and get that agreement with, certainly I think the FSB would be very simple to get that agreement. We find it trickier to deal sometimes with Mr. Bridge over at Histon, but we will try and make sure we get that clarity.
Thanks, James. In terms of moving this point on then, we've got an awful lot of other things to get through. Just maybe a question for Rochelle, just looking at John's paper here, headed Business Comms, Business Support and Strategy. We just work through the various elements of that, and are there any specific recommendations here that we need to put to the accountable body to move them forward? Now's the time to do that. The business comms, I think, is entirely within our own gift and control, John. So press on regardless. In terms of business support, though, the advice and signposting, presumably the repurposing of 3 staff is entirely within our own gift as well. Perfect. In terms of finance, relaxing the existing loan repayments and or looking at advancing payments on the current LGF projects, that's not within our gift as a board.
It isn't. So, yeah. Do you want to take this, Rob?
Sure.
Yes.
Go for it, Rochelle. Okay, fine. Yeah, so that would require the CPCA board as the accountable body to agree a recommendation from the business board. And we've been having a look at this, particularly in light of some guidance that came through from government today on how local authorities should be dealing with their suppliers, which is basically saying pay them as soon as possible. It's okay to help them out with their cash flow if needed, up to certain limits. But it should be done on a case-by-case basis after analysing whether they actually need the intervention individually rather than taking a blanket approach. So from that perspective, the government seems to be supportive of us taking interventions that will help companies in the short term. We just need to make sure we're using it for companies that are actually in need. But fundamentally, yes, it would be the business board coming to we would like to do this, and the CPCA board then considering it from a financial proprietary point of view.
Am I correct in, I think, because we can either, when applications have come into us previously, some have been for grants and some have been for loans. And we've often debated whether they should be grants or loans. But we could have, anything we've given previously as a grant could have been a loan, presumably, if the application, sorry, anything we've given as a loan previously could have been a grant if the application had come in written in a different way. So if the business board was minded to, presumably we could recommend to the combined authority that they convert any loans to grants and therefore don't expect repayment.
That is certainly something that could be suggested. The issue with that potentially is that we scored the proposals based on whether or not they were grant or loan. So if they'd actually applied for a grant, they'd have scored differently and someone else might have got funded. So we might get open a can of worms in terms of, are we being fair and transparent in our decision making?
If we have to do them one by one, we just need to make sure we can make decisions really quickly. Because as you know, as we said earlier, some businesses they have this week and then they have no cash left.
Go on, John.
Yeah, in terms of process, I don't think we'll probably come up with with a full set of recommendations on this meeting, but we are working with governance colleagues and Rochelle such that in the coming days we can put something back to you that that would recommend changes on existing and future LGF contracts. For you to potentially approve remotely and then for us to take to the combined authority board so that we can get something done outside the normal pattern of meetings. Rochelle, could you confirm that's possible?
Yeah, that's quite right, John. So we're working through our urgency procedure, which we need now more than ever. So it will be a process via email for any of those urgent decisions. But certainly, as Rob has said, it's important that the accountable body, being the combined authority, make the ultimate decision in relation to finances at this time.
Mm-hmm. There's not a case here for an overarching recommendation to delegate the authority to deal with this down from the accountable body. I'm just thinking about the speed that we need to move at, you know.
Yeah, the difficulty is we have had the guidance from government, which is now being considered by our legal and finance colleagues in great detail. And it may or may not transpire that there are recommendations to the combined authority board that covers that eventuality. So at this point in time, the advice from our monitoring officers is that we await that decision ultimately. But certainly, if there's anything that you wish to recommend going forward, there's nothing stopping the recommendation being considered by the combined authority, Austin.
Well, I think on item A, or A and A stroke A1, there are two simple recommendations. One is to delegate the authority to relax the existing loan repayments on a case-by-case basis, and the other one is to accelerate payments to recently funded projects on a case-by-case basis. But who better than the business board in conjunction with the senior officers to make that decision?
That's quite right. Can we suggest that it's better that we deal with both of those recommendations via our urgency provisions then?
Okay.
And that will cover the eventuality of what may or may not be within the remit of power.
Just mindful that there's a main board meeting in 2 days' time.
Quite right. So if we agree that that recommendation, as applicable, will be dealt with by our urgency provisions, then it will still leave enough time for it to go to the combined authority on Wednesday as necessary.
Okay. And then there's item B, which was adapting the current small grant provision from business and growth expansion to survival and recovery support. I mean, that's really a no-brainer. Do we have to go to the accountable body for authority to do that?
Again, I'd say for every one of those, actually, Austin, it should be our urgency procedure.
Okay.
I'd like to challenge that, if I may. If we're talking about our small grants, of which, of course, we've got £6 million worth of small grants and another £6 million worth of equity investments that are already, or certainly the grants are live already. The grant criteria for those is to a certain extent flexible and can be interpreted. So I think we've already got officer delegation on that area. I don't think we'd have to go back for a whole new set of criteria on the small grants. But I'll check that through with Rochelle, and as she said, today or tomorrow, we'll come back to you with what we can do on the big LGF stuff in terms of relaxing loan payments and accelerating payments on new grants, on the big stuff. And also we'll come back to you on what we can do in terms of repurposing the small grants around this recovery idea.
All right, perfect. If we could target doing that tomorrow, John, I guess a question for James. Have we time to table an amendment to put that to the meeting on Wednesday, make that happen?
I think I would have to defer that to Rochelle, but I'm quite happy to take an amendment as long as it's in accordance with the legal advice.
Okay. Thanks, James. All right, well, exceptional times, lots and lots of things going on there. Can I suggest that we then move back to the original agenda and let's try and work our way through some of the other issues now. We've got the benefit of some context there to review the various moving parts in. Brian, can we move back to 1.3 and let's try and motor through quickly the combined authority update. If you could provide us an update on that, In light of the current situation, I've agreed to defer the presentations on the A10 upgrade and the University of Peterborough until the May board meeting. And please note that an update from Rachel Stoppard on the GCP has also been postponed to a future meeting. The link to the Greater Cambridge LIS action plan was circulated to board members on Friday, I believe.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I will rattle through this because this article is obviously relating to a meeting that happened some time ago, but the team and the board have sent across the actual meeting minutes. The main notable items in the combined authority decisions themselves were further significant progress with a £100 million affordable housing schemes, and also the 100k homes business case was ratified. More closer to home in terms of the business board items that were put forward to the combined authority as a result of our last meeting, the news there was that all those recommendations were accepted by the combined authority board. I'll leave it there because the papers are there for people to read. You're on mute, Austin.
Apologies. There's no action there other than to note the decision statement, so thank you for that. Let's move on to 1.4, the Business Advisory Panel update. Brian, if you give us a quick update on that.
Sure, I will do. The Business Advisory Panel met back in the 20th of February, and there are various talking points that came out. I think events have overtaken a lot of this, but I'll just quickly rattle through the items that they noted at that time that were concerns. Firstly, the BAP members expressed extreme concern at the New Points immigration system. We also discussed the significant point that Peterborough does not have an identifiable business networking structure or community. That was noted. And also noted was that general health and wellness in the workplace amongst business leaders is becoming an increasing concern. And of course, now with the recent COVID-19, those business leaders will be under increasing pressure. There was also a note that in light of Brexit happening, UK imports may actually be letting in adverse products, and particularly the agricultural and food sector were mobilising to defend against that. And then item E, rather ironically, noted that the impact of coronavirus in China particularly was already starting to impact UK business. Of course, we are where we are now with much closer to home impacts on that. One of the things the BAP wanted to create as well, although it's not come through yet, where they were going to create a letter of intent co-signed by all the participants to list their goals and targets for the BAP and their priority issues, but that hasn't come through yet. I will share that when that comes through. In terms of the BAP participation in other items, they're fully supportive of the CPCA Climate Change Commission and will be feeding into that and working with our colleague Adrian Kennard on that. Lastly, the BAP are fully supportive of cascading all messages to and from their business community, and in fact, they've been incredibly supportive with cascading our COVID-19 messages to their respective members. So that concludes that item. So I'd just like board members to note that update. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Can I comment on that, Chair?
You can.
Would you like to explain to me why Peterborough hasn't got a business system when it's got Opportunity Peterborough that seems to be doing that job?
They acknowledged that they acknowledged that one network, but they felt there could be more that could be done to bring all Peterborough businesses together.
Well, that's not what you said. You said there wasn't one, but there is one, and they do have quite a number of members, and they hold regular breakfast meetings, which they could put one on specifically on this sort of thing, couldn't they? And you could come and talk to it.
Noted.
All right. Make sure your position's accurate, please.
Thank you.
Noted. Any other comments? All right, let's move on to 2.1, the Local Growth Fund update, please. Steve?
Sorry, Austin, I was talking away on mute. I just wanted to come in on that because I recognise that Opportunity Peterborough does do a role with the businesses in Peterborough, but I would back the BAP and say I think there's more depth and breadth that is needed with some of the communication and business networking that goes on. There's a lot of networks in Peterborough, but they in themselves are not networked. So there's lots of smaller networks, and I think some piece of work that might bring all them together and create a grand network, shall we say, even if that's about putting out information like coronavirus or grant funds or whatever, would be worthwhile.
Thanks, Rebecca. John?
Just to follow Rebecca's point, and of course agree with Councillor Holditch, but I would point out that Opportunity Peterborough have asked for, and you have agreed to give them 400k to create a better business network in Peterborough. So I think even OP would say more can be done, and they're planning to do it, and you're funding them to do so.
I have to say, nobody would ever say you can't do any more. So anyway, as long as that's what the man said, there wasn't any at all, and there is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. No doubt in the fullness of time, we'll get some feedback on that, John, and the investment that's been made. Steve?
Sorry, Austin, I've done it again. Opportunity Peterborough aren't part of the business advisory panel. Shouldn't they be then?
Good point.
We did. I think somewhere in the papers. Sorry, Chairman. Somewhere in the papers, I think there was an action. I thought it was for the next meeting. We were going to look at whether other people should join the BAP. Because I thought we did have a bit of a discussion about this last time, didn't we?
As I recall, I think the view was before we broaden and strengthen the inputs, that we get the process and the quality of the information right and the framework, which I have to say this month does sound a little bit better, Brian, so thank you for that. More to be done, I think, though, still.
Can I second that? Can I second that? When I read the minutes this time, I thought they were much better, much more focused and much more aligned to our agenda than they had been previously.
Thank you, Tina. If you could feed that back to them, Brian, please.
The situation we're in, shouldn't we use everybody at the moment that we've got contacts with?
So I think for me, the minutes from the back were much better, much crisper this time. I think the conversation about using the wider network of contacts is really important. I know we talked previously as well about Cambridge Ahead and Cambridge Network, and that was part of the debate about is it one of those or is it both of them, etc. The only caution I would flag is that and it's the point that was made earlier, is just the volume of people that are trying to help currently with in the current situation. So the reason I nipped off the call earlier to go and talk to Addenbrooke's was we are, so the university is, lots of people are contacting Addenbrooke's and saying we can help. Today we set up an email, we announced at 1:30, a new email address in the university saying if you've got an idea that could help with coronavirus, please just email here and we'll centralise them rather than independently lots of people contacting the hospital. Since we launched that at 1:30, I've now had 40 emails come through on that with all sorts of suggestions of PPE, people volunteering, a range of things. And what I'm trying to do with that is avoid drowning the hospital with lots of offers of help because they just can't cope with the volume of offers at the moment. And I think that's also true here, John. We just need to think about how we best use the BAP and their network so that we don't make more noise, but we actually create a much more streamlined communications process for people.
Yep, noted. Thanks, Andy. Can we move on then, please, to the Local Growth Fund, Steve?
Yeah, hi everybody. Apologies if screaming kids suddenly come through, if you can hear me. So yes, LGF. So since we approved all of the projects last time, as of 29th of February, we currently had 10 projects, including the small grant scheme, in delivery. Since then, 2 more have signed their grant funding agreements since the 29th of February, bringing that to 12. As of 29th of February, we still had 20 projects approved that were in pre-contract position. Just making a point about accelerated payment to any of these LGF awards. Of course, people do need to sign their grant funding agreements before we can accelerate any payments. So we have we have 18 now, with 2 done in the last couple of days. 18 that need to sign their funding agreement before we can advance any payment. Of all those projects, of all the projects that are currently in delivery, we have 3 which are now telling us that they probably won't take all of their full application, which means we are likely to have 8.9 million to be allocated again for spend, and that's the figure that could be used for contribution to a repurposed scheme. Just moving along, sorry, the reason for some of that money coming back from projects is that one of them is saying they will not be able to spend the funding before the period. One has gone into liquidation, so we have got some money back from the liquidators. And the other project is Wisbech Access, which is now telling us that they will reprofile the number of schemes in their project, which means we'll have some funding back. In terms of completed projects, we will begin monitoring and evaluation on those very shortly.
Steve, sorry, it's Andy. Just before you go on, you said that one of the organisations that we had granted money to had gone into liquidation.
Yeah, that was pre-COVID. This is the West Anglia Training Association.
How did we not manage to pick up in the due diligence that they were in really financially shaky ground, given these grants were made relatively recently?
No, this is an old one. This is a very historic grant given by the LEP.
Okay, all right. It goes back a long time. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's to do with A14 Highways Academy, well before that all started.
Okay.
Yeah. So just moving along, sorry, we submitted our Q3 monitoring return to Baysday. All of our projects now, we have no red flagged projects at the moment, just 2 ambers, which is Kings Dyke and Wisbech Access Strategy. Moving along again, in terms of, I've covered off about returning funds, which we will need to allocate. I guess there's no decision in this paper about what we do with that money. Just to say that we were looking at our pipeline of existing projects to consider for this money. So I guess this decision around urgent decision to the Combined Authority Board is just to clarify what we do with that £9 million spend. The Small Business Grants Programme, as has already been mentioned, as of the 29th of February, we had 9 applications, but that has ramped up even since I wrote this paper very significantly. And I'm led to believe by Growth Hub colleagues, we almost near to £1 million allocated or approved at least, if not drawn. So yeah, the demand is certainly going to go. And flexibilities on that scheme, as we've already discussed, are going to be absolutely crucial, I think. And again, being flexible, maybe paying people their grant, instead of doing it retrospectively, actually pay them upfront or even place the order with the supplier using that money. The Eastern Agritech Growth Initiative, same point really. We've got 3 projects going to the programme board at the end of this month. But again, I think some flexibilities in that programme now might make it a lot easier, and demand will certainly move up. The current pipeline in the Agritech is worth 7.5 million, but I'm a little bit wary of that figure in that I think that's a historical built pipeline over a long period of time, and I suspect a lot of those would not come forwards now. In terms of recycled funding, the business board has funding which had been returned from previous local growth funding loans and Growing Places funding loans. Some of that as capital, some of that as interest. You'll have seen at Appendix B with this paper, that's all been profiled out, how it shows coming back to us. Now there are some commitments on that recycled funding which are already agreed, but when you look at the net, when you take away those commitments, you look forward to the 2030 in that profile, there's still 4.9 remaining in the capital line and 1.1 million remaining in the interest line. So again, that's another funding stream which the business board has at its fingertips, albeit it's profiled over a very, very long period of time. The other thing on LGF, just to add, which is not in the paper, we're writing today to all of our project leads on the local growth funding, and I will take on board all that's been said so far about flexibilities around what we can do, but we're basically asking them to tell us how their project is doing and of issues, and particularly encouraging them to sign their grant funding agreements. And that's it. That's it for the paper. So it was basically to note the items in the paper and the recycled funds.
Thank you, Steve. Noting all those points. In terms of the 8.9 million, what's the timescale for that? What are the constraints around that?
Well, notionally, it was on the same footing as the existing LGF, so spend before the end of 31st of March. But taking on board Rob's earlier point about how hard that deadline may become, or is now.
Indeed. Any questions for Steve?
Could I just clarify my earlier comment? I think we still need to keep in mind that that is a condition put on us by BEIS. While it's not a legal one, we would have to have a good narrative, and we shouldn't just be... Obviously, coronavirus gives us an extremely good reason for these projects to have been delayed. We should still bear in mind our future relationship with BEIS will be impacted by the decisions we make.
Thank you, Rob. James.
I still think that, as I always have, that the funding for the LEP wasn't frozen by the combined authority. The funding for the LEP was frozen by BEIS and by central government. I've always felt very, very strongly that the businesses of Cambridgeshire and of course the business board and the combined authority shouldn't be punished by BEIS for what happened before. I think pretty much every single one of us was involved. Almost every single one of us was involved in the business board or the LEP as it was. So I'll make that point again in this recorded meeting, that that when government froze the assets of the LEP and asked us to sort out the problem, I feel that deadlines should be considered alongside that significant length of time where money was completely frozen. And of course, now more than ever, it's important that we recycle the funds into the economy rather than sit and argue with mandarins in Whitehall about deadlines.
Yeah. Noted, James. Is there any opportunity to flip any of that funding into support of the coronavirus issues as a hardship fund, maybe? John.
There's always chances to do anything. I would, however, point out some processes. If you add up the 11 million we've already got approved that could be flexed, and we're in procurement for business growth coaching, that in my paper could be used for that orient, adapt, and regrow phase, you also take into account the fact that we've already got 12 million approved, half in grants and half in equity. That gives us 21 million we're already in procurement for, we've already got permission for, and we could flex, and it could be mobilised for 1st of August. Conversely, if we focus on that 8.9 million, we would have to do a call that says we want to do something for COVID, and then the market would have to respond, and the market may be looking at survival rather than helping us at the moment. And then we'd have to go through a procurement and approval process. So my suggestion would be for us to focus on that 21 million that's readily adaptable and mobilisable by August, rather than focus on the 8.9 that could take a lot longer to get into a state where it was actually doing something for us.
Yeah. Noted. Thanks, John. Any questions, anyone? All right, perfect then.
I have one question. Sorry, I see my video's gone off. Yes, it was just about the Agritech Growth Fund. The Will Hare was the business board contact on that. And I just realised, sitting here with Will having stepped down from the board, do you want me to have a word with Steve offline and see if it's necessary for me to help somehow?
That would be super. Thanks, Tina.
Okay.
That would be good.
All righty then. Noting the 3 points, Steve. Thank you. Let's move on. The University of Peterborough outline business case, Kim. Are we in a position to touch on that?
Yeah, I think so. Just to sort of reiterate what we said on the earlier call about where we are with this current project. And as we sit here today, the project is still on track. The conversations are still going on. The procurement is still live. The final submission for the tender from the HE partner that we're negotiating with at the moment is due on the 17th of April. And the permission to work towards the heads of terms will go to the Peterborough City Board at the end of this week. The permissions required for the HE partner to finalise their tender go to their board at the end of this week. But I'm really, really conscious that this week is an important week in the project, and recognise wholeheartedly that the HE partner that we're talking to has a lot of work to do within their own establishment around COVID-19, basically. So although everything is ongoing and everything is on track as we sit here today, we do have this window whereby we have the next sort of 8, 10, 12 weeks before any announcements are made on the project. But I just wanted you all to be aware that obviously the university that we're talking to, like every university, is currently trying to deal with their own problems in-house. John, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so, other than just to say the obvious, in that the university project will be impacted by COVID. We hope that it won't impact the ultimate target we've got of opening the doors in 2022, but our academic partner is certainly sending us signals to be flexible.
Can I comment on Kim? The board meeting and city council will not take place unless the government allows to after today. Can you send me the detail of what you want, and I'll make sure there's a cabinet member decision notice taken on it.
Yeah, no worries. Elliot's got that, and so has Dave Anderson. So they've already got the paper, Councillor Holditch.
I think you'll find Dave Anderson stuck in Scotland.
Okay, I'll make sure you get it. I'll make sure you get it.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Kim, it would be useful in terms of due diligence just to check about the university partners dependent on overseas and international students? Because one of the worries for universities at the moment is, well, twofold. One, that admitting overseas international students for next year was difficult because when the virus broke originally in China, lots of people weren't able to take their tests. And two, that quite a lot of universities are worried about whether people will come for the start of the new academic year in October. It's not the university that you are talking about, but I know of one particular university where their exposure is, as a consequence, about £90 million. And it's going to have a massive, massive impact on finances of some universities. So we need to make sure the one you're talking to is financially secure.
Noted. John?
Yeah, just to confirm, the university that we're negotiating with is currently producing a much more detailed business plan, and they'll be putting it forward to Andy Neely, the representative on this board, looking at viability of the university. So we'll be setting that meeting up, and Andy will get a chance to look at the business plan and its relationship to international students.
Perfect. Thanks, Andy. Are there any other questions? Kelly?
Sorry, I'm still on mute. Yeah, thank you, Austin. I think, again, I suppose just some kind of points, possibly questions from me, but I think when this came to EAP, I raised a couple of questions around the curriculum and actually what was going to be on offered, definitely what was needed for the local business community. Again, kind of questioning how many businesses had been involved in part of that. Yeah. We mentioned in the kind of pre-meeting that there were concerns about the curriculum. So I think I suppose the question there is, what are those concerns? But I think possibly also to note, again, looking at where we're kind of looking at with entry and the points I made earlier about kind of apprenticeships and all of those sorts of things, what we have seen from central government this week is the fact that GCSEs and A-levels are not going to be necessarily taking place this year. They're going to be potentially looking at some of the predicted grades. Ultimately, if we're looking, say, particularly at GCSE, that may then have an impact on certainly A-level kind of attainment over the next couple of years. But also then, if people aren't necessarily getting their grades or they're not able to complete this year, is there then going to be a knock-on effect? So I suppose for me, one, around kind of local business community, are we absolutely sure that the curriculum is going to deliver what we need locally? And secondly, then from a student perspective, would we necessarily have the students with the grades to be able to complete the courses that they want to be completing, given where we are with the whole coronavirus situation at the moment?
Yeah. Can I answer that, Chair? I mean, obviously with the curriculum, Kelly, just so that you're aware, in the outline business case, we did a tremendous amount of curriculum modelling to get us to where we are with the outline business case and with phase one. The curriculum was actually identified through a business survey run by Opportunity Peterborough, as well as the data and the research and the evidence that has been given to us through the SPEAR, the Local Industrial Strategy and the Skills Strategy. So the curriculum for the phase one of the university, which is a technical university, is based on business demand and business need. Due to the phase one building being a particular size, there are 3 to 4 faculties going in there. And I think, as we discussed in the earlier call, the Faculty of Business Innovation and Entrepreneurship being one of those faculties, digitalization, technologies, science and arts being a second faculty, as well as agri-tech, environmental services and sustainability as the third, and health and social care being the fourth. Even before the situation we currently find ourselves in within the world crisis and the businesses, I think those 4 faculties had already been identified as a need for the Peterborough and the sort of wider region, identifying a cohort of up to 17,000 people that could potentially access the new University of Peterborough. So there's definitely a market. it was based on business need, as I say, through the local industrial strategy and a business survey. Having said that, as I say, when we come out the other side of that, health and social care is going to be, well, all of those faculties are going to have huge significant impact on the region. You're going to have people that are going to have lost their jobs, people that are going to need to be retrained, people that are going to change their lives because of what's happening at the moment. There will be transformational change. And more than ever, Peterborough needs this university to go ahead to support the regeneration, not only of that city, but the rebirth of education and skills as we know it, because the next 6 months will decimate the skills market. Going back to the students with their GCSEs and their A-levels, I fully take on board, or we fully take on board, attainment levels, and obviously there will be a lot of work done by central government and universities around pathways to higher education in light of this this crisis. So I don't really want to be too drawn into that without knowing what the answer for that is going to be. But I honestly believe the 4 curriculum faculties that we start off with within phase 1 will be absolutely crucial to getting this country back on its knee, off its knees and back to work, basically. The curriculum comment I made before was because when people came to the public consultation, they seemed to think we were going to have a 28 sort of degree curriculum offer, and that was never what we were going to do. We've got University Centre Peterborough in Peterborough that currently offer a huge breadth and a wide range of degrees, and Anglia Ruskin University also have the health and social care and the nurses already within that region. So if we were going to put a university on the embankment site, it always had to be very, very different to the current offer, which is why we've based it on evidence, research, and business need.
All right, thank you, Kim. Can I suggest that since this is an update for the business board today, that and it's a complex issue, if people do have any other questions or concerns, that they maybe address them to Kim directly, and I'm sure she'd be happy to try and provide clarifications.
Of course.
Thank you, Kim.
No worries.
All right, can we move on to item 3.2? I believe Vanessa is going to give us an update on the budget, business board budget. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, good afternoon. This is a fairly new paper. This is sort of the second time we've presented it to the board, and it's still in its early days of the format that you'd like it to be laid out in. I'll keep it as brief as possible. It's very simple. We've got one section set out to the funding lines that you as a business board have direct control over and influence on the spending. The other section is areas that fall within your remit, but you don't actually have any control over the spending. It really is just to give you an update on the figures, where they are looking to be for the end of March, and for you to note the comments relating to that. I think that's as brief as I can be on that, unless you have any questions.
Super, thanks Vanessa. Any questions, anyone? Was that a hand raised, Tina? You're on mute. Alrighty, I'll take it that everyone's happy. Thanks, Tina. Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So point noted. Let's move on to 3.3. Business and Skills Directorate Medium-Term Financial Plan Review, which I think Rob's going to give us an update on, please.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. I don't think I'll quite manage Vanessa's brevity, but I'll try to be somewhere close. So this paper presents a cut-down section of the Combined Authority's overall 4-year business plan, specifically focusing on the area John's director of and that the business board sits within, which is business and skills. To give you some context, the CPCA has to set a budget every year, and as part of that looks forward 4 years and sets a medium-term financial plan. We refresh it every year to take advantage, so we can take into account changing circumstances. Admittedly, we may have to do that a bit sooner than usual this year. as we were discussing earlier, there is flexibility to move funding around on a project by project basis within years. The budget lines in the paper are all funded by a combination of specific grants and CPCA core funding and enterprise zone receipts. The figures you'll see later from Dom for enterprise zone receipts that you have available are net of all the funding that's gone into this that's already committed. Elements of the budget are already committed to specific projects, for example, the SME Observatory that you agreed at your last meeting, or to fund the growth service. But other lines, particularly the LIS implementation line, have a significant degree of unallocated funding in there, which you can use to forward the business board's agenda. John and I have agreed to answer any questions you have on this as a bit of a double act. I'll answer any questions you have in terms of funding sources, conditions, things like that. And John will be able to speak much more eloquently than I could about the particular project details. So if you have any questions, please feel free.
Thanks, Rob. Questions? Is everyone happy?
I think
I have a question, Austin. On 3.2 and table 3.1, it's projecting ahead, and I'm particularly looking at 3.6, which is marketing and promotion of services, and we discussed that at the last meeting in January. There's nothing in for the subsequent years. Is that because there is no plan to put anything in, or will that be updated at a future point? My view would be that it would be wrong to throw a lot of money at it for 1 year and then not do anything for a period of time. There needs to be something to keep it ticking over.
Yeah. Do you want to go, John, or shall I?
Yes, I'll do it. Well, I'll see if I've got the right answer. You can tell me like whether it is. So Rebecca, yeah, absolutely, 1 year won't do it. And we will look at putting another second year to you once we've done the first year, and we can measure how effective it's been. So that's the first reason for only going for 1 year, so that we can pilot it effectively. The second reason for going only for 1 year is that the business growth service procurement is quite significant. It's £10.3 million worth of services from contractors. Somewhere within that 10.3 million, where, given that those contractors will be offering companies growth coaching, inward investment, skills brokerage, they should do their own marketing. So the other reason is to see how the first year of the business growth service pans out, and potentially put both budgets together and coordinate them. So it's a pilot and it's a waiting to see what happens with the business growth program.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
All right, if there are no more questions, thanks, Rob and John. Let's move on. Item 3.4, the advanced materials and manufacturing sector strategy. We're going to skip that. We'll come back to that in May. Item 3.5 then, enterprise zone funding utilisation. John, if you could help us with that, please.
And in fact, if I may, I'm going to defer to Dom.
I'll take this. Thank you, John. Thank you, Austin. So just to quickly run through this paper builds on what Vanessa just updated us on, and Rob. So our enterprise zone receipts are based on local authority NNDR returns. They've recently been submitted and approved by central government, and having been provided the latest figures, we updated our income figures, and you've been provided with the two tables. Table 1, which shows the previous figures, and then table 2 with the adjustments made in terms of income levels based on latest NNDR. And as a review of the budget, as a result of the budget review undertaken with Vanessa and Rob, we are utilising funding criteria through local growth fund, which allows us to allocate up to 75% of costs for delivery to the programme, and that will allow us to realign some costs between some corporate costs between enterprise zones and the LGF programme. So this paper is essentially asking the business board to approve 308,000 to be realigned to local growth fund.
Thank you, Dom. Are there any questions here? Okay, so here's our first video vote then. I think we'll deal with this by default. My working assumption is that we're going to approve the recommendation to the combined authority to approve the reallocation of the 306,313, representing 75% of all eligible costs from the enterprise zone NNDR income to the local growth fund. Can I ask if anyone's got any objection to that? If not, I will take it that that is a unanimous decision and we'll put that forward to the accountable body.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dom. Moving on, Business Board Governance Review. Rochelle, could you help us with that, please?
Thank you, Chair. So board members will be familiar with the paper at item 3.6. Board members will be aware that our current governance arrangements are contained within the Constitution and in the assurance framework. The governance review focused on 4 key areas: board oversight and assurance, board membership, board performance, and effective decision making. Board members will remember that we had an induction session in January, and the feedback from members on the governance arrangements has been taken into consideration as part of the finding and the feedback of recommendations and next steps, which you can find at the appendix to the paper. I'm conscious of time, and just to be brief, I'm going to focus on oversight and assurance. The main findings, as you'll all be aware, is that funding decisions are currently ratified by the combined authority. Now, the national framework requires that funding decisions are subject to financial oversight and proper administration of financial affairs by the accountable body. So there isn't actually a current requirement for a ratification process by the accountable body. And therefore, the decision as to whether or not we continue with the ratification process is one for the combined authority. So it's proposed that the combined authority is consulted on that point, and then there will be a further paper to board once the combined authority has made a decision on that. In terms of other recommendations, we found that the recruitment process that we used in August 2019 was very successful. And so the recommendation is to continue with that. There's a recommendation to continue with the induction day. We noted that the appointment panel for the post of the chair consists of 6 panel members, and so there was a recommendation to reduce the number of panel members. There's also a recommendation in relation to updating our conflict of interest policy to not only include members, but also include officers as well. We'll also hope to implement a gifts and hospitality policy, and also a remuneration process policy as well. So in terms of what the board are being asked for today, the board is asked to note and approve the preliminary recommendations and next steps outlined in the appendix. Recommend to the combined authority approval of the preliminary recommendations and next steps, and then also recommend that the combined authority monitor officer has delegated authority to amend the assurance framework and the constitution to reflect those recommendations. Given the current climate, it's very likely that there's going to be further amendments needed to accommodate urgent provisions and accommodate urgent decision makings. And that process will also be concurrent and ongoing as the need arises. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Rochelle. Questions? Anyone have any concerns here? See lots of shaking of heads. Very good.
Austin. That's Andy Neely.
Sorry, Andy.
Just a quick thing on the governance processes and decision making. I mean, I absolutely agree with the speed of decision making and so on. The one advantage of things going from us to the combined authority board for ratification, well, 2 advantages. seems to me. One, it involves the politically, the locally elected representatives, both being directly involved in the discussions, and it makes sure that that body, when it meets, has at least some of its agenda that focuses on issues that face business. And if we ended up in a situation where decisions didn't go to the Combined Authority Board, the danger of the Combined Authority Board's discussion would then focus on housing, infrastructure, etc., etc., and we might lose the opportunity to raise the business voice at that board. So it's just worth thinking about. It's a balance of where decisions are made with chance to actually have a wider discussion about some of the things we're talking about.
Thanks, Andy. Anyone else like to come in on that point? Any other points? Can I suggest then, noting Andy's comments, but that we move to recommend effectively the note and the two recommendations detailed as A, B, and C in the papers. And again, by default, if I can ask if anyone has any objections, we'll consider that, if not, to be a decision made. Alrighty, thank you. Thank you, Rochelle. Moving on then to 3.7, the governance update. A verbal update from John, please.
Thank you, Austin. This will be brief. So the annual performance review took place on the 3rd of February with BEIS. Don will have already sent you the record of that meeting. That includes itself the actions that were outstanding from the mid-year review that happened in June last year, which included in outstanding actions for us to conduct a governance review, which you've indeed just had the report from, so that's done. For Austin to write to Kate Hallett, which he did do on the 28th of February, on the actions against the business improvement plan, which I can go through with you if you'd like, but for brevity, I won't now. They were all complete as actions in the business improvement plan. And for us to share the mid-year review minutes with the business board members, which we did do. The review itself, as you would have seen from the record of the meeting, went through governance and our compliance with governance, our delivery performance, and our strategic impact. As we mentioned last time, we got good or acceptable for 2, but requires improvement on delivery. That being on the basis that we had not and could not allocate all our LGF funding by the 31st of March this year and get it all contracted. Although we won't be very far behind that. The action points from the annual review were that we should complete due diligence on our new additional female board member, which of course has been done, and Kelly's with us today, and we advised BEIS that had been completed. Also to include that we would commit to holding an AGM and that this would be a public meeting, and that to enable this it would be moved to May, and we're working with Rochelle on the logistics of making a public meeting virtual, which of course is happening for the combined authority meetings. The other issues were that we should complete our governance review, which indeed we just did a minute ago, and that our Section 73 officers should sign off our assurance statement, which hadn't been done before and is being done now, and also that we write to BEIS and DFT, Department for Transport, around our skills advisory panel and our local assurance framework, which we have now done, and that we share the enterprise zone MOU with Huntingdonshire with our base colleagues, which was also done. Our base colleagues asked if they could also attend the project board meetings for our enterprise zones, which we agreed to. And finally, that CLGU, the Communities of Local Government Unit, would share with Jake Berry details of the University of Peterborough plans that we had, and our plans for a research centre in Peterborough as well. And they have all been done on various dates in March and February, between the 5th of February and the 31st of March. So that's my feedback on the governance update.
That's great. Thanks, John. Good job all round. Anyone have any questions? It's notable that no one's really raised any issues in the documents that were circulated around the governance review. I think certainly thanks are due indeed to the team for all the hard work to get us to the position that we're in. There are a few other things just to dot I's and cross T's on, but we're in a much better position than ever we were, I believe. Thank you. All right. Moving on, item 3.8, we dealt with at the front of the meeting, the coronavirus update. Moving on to 4.1 then, business board headlines for the combined authority. I mean, there are I think 2 or 3 minor recommendations that we've passed through, which will get passed on in due course, and hopefully they will be well supported. My guess is that the meeting with the combined authority is going to get largely overtaken by what are we and what can we do in support of the coronavirus issues. And going back to an earlier point, I would certainly hope that tomorrow, with some help from Rochelle and the legal people, that we can get some recommendations put into shape very quickly to get those tabled at that meeting, and take the brakes off our ability to provide some liquidity through some of these other sources of funding, perhaps. So appreciate your help and support with that tomorrow. Moving on then to 4.2 and the forward business plan. That's presented in the papers. Obviously, there's a few moving parts. We've taken a few things out of this meeting to concentrate on the more pressing issues. So there'll be a little bit of a rejig of that just to reshape that, but no doubt that will get circulated in the fullness of time. In closing then, on the date of the next meeting, that is scheduled for Tuesday the 26th of May. It's likely that this meeting will also need to be held remotely as a video conferencing meeting. Deals will be circulated by Domenico over time. If anyone's got any feedback on this meeting, on the mechanics of it and how that's worked, I have to say it's actually surpassed my expectations a little bit today, that we've been able to get through quite a hefty agenda, deal with the key issues and keep to time, and hopefully everyone feels like they've had their opportunity to contribute as and when. So thanks very much to IT for all the help and support in making that happen, and Dom in testing it and setting up all the various links and things. Great job, appreciated. The May meeting was going to be open to the public. Board members will be aware that the business board has an obligation to hold one meeting every year in public. Whilst a live recording of the meeting could be made available, it is suggested that the public meeting of the business board is deferred until later in the year so that it can truly open to the public. I don't know if anyone has any strong views on that, but I think that's certainly the recommendation that we should run with.
Austin, I would agree with that. I wonder though whether, and it'd be interesting what colleagues felt, whether it's worth thinking about putting in a some short meetings between now and May. May feels like a long time away, given what's going on in the world. And it might be that we think, actually, you know, every couple of weeks we just want a quick catch up on the phone to see what developments are. We can always cancel them if we don't need them, but it just feels like a long way away to be next to discussing some of these issues.
Yeah, indeed. Agreed. Let's put some thought into that, John and Domenico, if maybe you could think about putting together a very short agenda of the key issues that we need some higher frequency touch points on, coronavirus, of course, being one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll do that, thank you.
And Austin, may I just say a few words as well? It's Kim Soy here.
Yes, of course.
Hello. I just joined you today. I don't ordinarily sit in on the business board meetings, but I joined you today because we are testing a new system, and we made a sort of quite brave decision, I think, last week to try and press ahead with all our meetings online, because I think we think it's important, if we're going to see the economic recovery in our area happen fairly quickly, that we try to deliver business as usual as much as possible. And I must say, I just want to echo your comments. I think this has worked exceptionally well. And yes, I certainly agree also. I think it's probably a way of arranging quite simply some very quick meetings where we can all get together and just have a discussion about matters before we as officers might want to move on. It is always helpful to be able to have that sounding board, both from the business community and also our politicians, as we move through what are some quite difficult times. So yes, I think I'm very much echo the comments made today.
Thank you, Kim. All right, if there are no other items, then we'll bring the meeting to a close. Thanks everyone for your participation and patience. Grand job. Everyone stay safe, please.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Can't leave.
James, are you still on the meeting? No. No. Okay, I'll catch up with them after. Okay, thanks, Dom. Brilliant job.
Thank you, Kim.
It's really good. It went really well. Well done, Nick. That all went.
No, I did nothing. It went brilliant.
Well, you know, you were there, and you helped us put it all together, and it's all part of a teamwork effort, isn't it, to make sure we can deliver this. So thank you so much. It was really appreciated.
I just got to find out now how to save the recording. Can you just stay on the line, please?
Yeah, I'll stay here.
Okay, then I'll speak to you later. Well done, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Kim.
Bye.
Bye.
So, Nick, it's still saying recording.
Yeah, or what you want to do is you'll want to close the meeting or end the meeting, and it'll pop up saying it's buffering or compressing or something, and it will ask you where you want to save it on your hard drive, and you just save it.
Okay, so I don't have to. You sure? I'll just press end meeting, yeah?
I hope so, yeah. Let me know if that doesn't work. and then if you could.
I was going to try. What about if I just push stop recording? No.
Yeah, maybe that one. Give that a go.
Let me just see what happens.
I'm not going to cancel the whole stuff you've recorded. So.
Do you want to stop cloud recording? Yes or no? So if I put yes, and then